All right, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us here today at the CPACT event. You will have already heard me outline why this is such an important project for New Zealand, but obviously from the perspective of Pacific priorities, making sure that we are investing now in those initiatives that are going to give us climate resilience to, of course, the changing environment, to severe weather events, to potentially increased drought, is incredibly important for us as a region. It also allows the preservation of biodiversity, which is important to all of us. Just to reflect then on the morning as well, I had the chance to meet with the President of Palau in a bilateral meeting, which was an excellent opportunity to meet face to face. He and I have had a phone conversation before, but really good to discuss events since that time, and obviously we've had issues within Micronesia for some time, the Suva agreement on the table, a chance to check in on members from within the region and their satisfaction with the agreement that has been reached. Also had an opportunity here this morning as the Pacific Island Forum members from the likes of the World Bank, the Asia Development Bank, the IMF on their projections around the impact of pressures on the global economy and the likely impact on our region. Very similar themes. Reflecting on the war in Ukraine, exacerbating energy prices, the impact of inflation, supply chain constraints, and of course COVID lockdowns in China and the impact that will have on the region. What came through as a really strong theme was a desire from members within the region to build greater energy resilience, to move away as much as possible from the reliance we have on fossil fuels, because of course the price impacts that has, they're increasingly becoming unaffordable, but also the fact that offers an opportunity for climate mitigation as well. I expect that will be one of many themes that comes through the Pacific Island Forum. It'll be great to see us as a forum make progress and set some aspirations as a region for greater energy resilience. For casting forward, obviously a number of bilaterals over the coming days, Prime Minister Sogavare, and of course a bilateral with as chair the Prime Minister of Fiji as well, which I'm very much looking forward to. Happy now to take questions.
Prime Minister, Palau is obviously in Micronesia.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how long you dwelled on the Micronesian grievances, and if you think you have a better understanding of now of the split that's emerging?
Well, actually, at the time that concerns were raised, and keeping in mind this has been an issue over the course of the better part of 2 years, these were issues that actually I discussed with the President some time ago when they first arose, and when there was the issue of Micronesia talking about potentially withdrawing from the Pacific Island Forum. That was when I first canvassed those issues and sought to speak to a number of members from Micronesia to better understand those issues and how we could support resolution. So today it was actually a follow-up conversation. It was a chance to check in on the Suva agreement, whether or not that from Palau's perspective had met the needs. Their view, well actually it's not for me to speak on behalf of anyone, but you can see from the fact that the Suva agreement has come forth from a number of members of Micronesia that we have now the potential to agree and to move on collectively with those new arrangements in place.
How significant is Kamala Harris tomorrow addressing the Pacific Islands Forum, and do you see that as a positive?
Oh, look, tomorrow we have the Vice President of the United States addressing the Pacific Island Forum as a part of the Tuna Treaty meeting. Now, obviously, fisheries and the resource and income and revenue that provides the region is incredibly important. The Tuna Treaty has been up for renegotiation, and there's been a request made of the United States to directly respond to a request from the Pacific, and that is the basis on which we have the Vice President coming and addressing members of the Pacific Island Forum as part of that Tuna Treaty. That is important. It acknowledges that the Pacific Island Forum members and this very important conversation is important to the United States too, and it demonstrates that their call has been heard for a response.
Do you have any issues with?
Yep, I'll come to you.
Sort of a meeting as well during the week, which was turned away. I mean, obviously, do you see this in that wider context? The US is playing into this situation?
Well, look, I think again, there's, as I've often talked about, a number of partners in the Pacific who have been around for some time, but their level of engagement has either increased or decreased over time. In China, we have an example of a development partner who's been around the Pacific for decades, but is certainly increasing their activity and changing the way in which they engage. And we've, from New Zealand's perspective, said that there are elements of that, particularly when it comes to the security arrangements of the region, that concern us. On the other hand, you've had the United States, who equally have been present and engaged in the region, perhaps over the past few years waning in their engagement. And at the behest of many in the region, are now seeking to re-engage again, to step back up to the expectations that already exist in the region. And so you can see that all of this activity occurring at the same time does mean we have a more contested environment. That's where we've got to come back to the principles. What's important to us as a region? In our minds, Pacific priorities, to make sure that there's no coercion in play. Let's make sure that we respect the sovereignty of everyone. But again, if it's a security related matter, we don't want the militarisation of our region. Isabel.
How much is the climate action that you're taking today intertwined with those security concerns and sort of taking climate action, sending that message that you are here, as a security partner, given that climate change has been a security threat for Pacific's been talking about for decades?
Yeah, look, climate change has been at every Pacific Island forum I've been to, really top of the agenda, and it is a security challenge. Anything that disrupts the economic resilience and cohesion of our region, anything that threatens the lives and livelihoods is a security issue, and that's what climate change represents for this region. So here is one initiative, yes, that you may say, look, that's contributing to ensuring that we have food security, but all of these things come back to this issue of essentially the resilience of our region and our general security as a region as well.
What do you...
Sending a message that New Zealand as a key security partner should be chosen perhaps over others?
I think I'd like to think that message doesn't necessarily need to be sent, but rather renewed. We have been significant partners in the region amongst the top three for a long, long time. But it's more than just whether or not you're a donor in the region. This is our home. This is the place we live in. It's who we are. And I'd like to think that the way that we do things, the relationship we build, also sets us apart from other nations.
What are you planning to say to Prime Minister Sogavare tomorrow about the Solomon Islands, China security deal? And what can you say about the New Zealand Solomons discussions around a security work plan? Where is that at?
Yeah. Look, one thing, the honest reflection I have is that I don't necessarily sit down and pre-script conversations. There are things that I'm keen to talk about. Obviously, as you can imagine, this is an opportunity, and I have already engaged with the Prime Minister over concerns over recent security arrangements. I've done that at a distance over the phone. Now's a chance to do that face to face. That won't come as a surprise. It'll also be an opportunity for us to, of course, talk about the presence New Zealand has, the ongoing role that we can continue to play. We've been present with the Solomons for years. They're important to us as a partner, and also the role that we can play on pressing challenges into the future. We've also worked together on issues around COVID as well, so it'll be a chance to touch base on things like that
Do you
too.
have any challenges with Benny Marama in your bilateral intervention?
Again, a list of things I'd like to talk about. He's of course been chair, so it'll be useful to touch base on how he sees the Suva agreement bringing that forum unity together. Also, how we can continue to work together. We've worked closely on climate change issues, but also some of the regional challenges as well, and how we can support Fiji in their role as chair for the remainder of the forum.
We spoke yesterday about China.
And then I'll come to you if I may.
We spoke yesterday about how we'd heard that China was trying to convene a meeting on the day of the leaders,
Yes.
big leaders meeting.
Yeah.
In your time here on the ground, have you had any discussions about that or had that confirmed by any other
No,
leaders?
forgive me, I have not, and nor could I tell you whether it continues to be scheduled at that time, so I might just have to come back to you, unfortunately. Obviously, for us, big focus on the Leaders Forum itself, but I might have to come back to you. Yeah.
Focusing on Kiribati's departure from
Yeah.
the forum, how vulnerable would you say Kiribati is now that it sits outside of the forum umbrella and in terms of its diplomatic ties to China?
Here I would lean actually on, the sentiment of Kiribati itself. I think if they were highlighting any vulnerability for them, it would be climate related. They're suffering significant drought at present and have said that they wish to continue to work with the forum because these issues are so pressing and real and present for them now. Do we hope that they'll come back into the forum formally? Absolutely, and that's my hope. I'm sure it's everyone's hope, but I think we have an agreement now that Micronesian members have broadly indicated their support for. They were at the table in developing it, and I hope as over time Kiribati will choose to return.
On the China-Solomons Pact, will you be seeking more clarity on what led to that deal?
Well, I have had some initial conversations already, and they're very, very much, I don't think I'd be speaking out of turn to actually just reference the fact they're very much the rationale that's been provided is just in keeping with the public statements the Prime Minister has made. And so I will reiterate our position, which is very much that, look, no one is questioning the individual sovereignty of a nation to determine its own relationships, but security arrangements have wider impacts. And that is really what we're drawing to the attention of the Solomons, and equally the fact that we have been present there to help support as family, to help support the security needs of the region. And if there have been deficiencies in that, then I'd like to hear what they were.
And you mentioned yesterday about kind of setting sort of some ground rules about how the region responds when proposals are put forward. Is that something that you'd...
I don't know if I'd call it ground rules, but just we have, as I say, broad expectations already in the Biki Tawa Declaration and the Bow Declaration. What are, as forum members then, what do we foresee that meaning in practice? Should we have another situation like this arise? What are our expectations as forum members? So that's the conversation I hope the forum has.
On Kiribati bus not being here, how devastating is it, given your comments about how that nation's being affected by climate change, that Kiribati isn't here when the 2050 strategy is supposed to be endorsed?
And yet at the same time, so look, it is, of course it's disappointing not to have a forum member here, but at the same time they themselves have identified that climate change is an area where they wish to continue to work with the forum. And so here I think we need to acknowledge that yes, unity is incredibly important to us, and I think we all still aspire to that, but we cannot at the same time halt the progress that needs to be made on working collectively on climate issues. All right, I make the Isabel, and Ben, you can finish for me. You go, Isabel.
Sure. What do you expect to come from the Aussies in terms of climate finance delivery, given the commitments from Anthony Albanese? Do you think he might result to you in the coming days?
Look, there's one area where I think the world would welcome some healthy competition between New Zealand and Australia, and I imagine that would be our climate action. This is an area where it's only good for all of us if you see Australia upping the ante there. All I know is that from New Zealand's perspective, we've known that we needed to increase our ambition. We have. We needed to increase our climate finance. We have significantly. And if others choose to do the same, that is only a good thing.
The Prime Minister, that $10 million out of $1.3 billion
yes.
fund, and it's taken about 10 months to get that. Are you satisfied?
It would be wrong to assume that this is the only activity that we have underway. This is one which I'm launching and which you were present.
I guess committed to within the 4 years spending all that.
Yeah, yes. One of the issues that we have, of course, is that, in some cases, quite a bit of background work needs to be done for funding some of the initiatives, whether or not they're adaptation or mitigation projects. And one of the things that has been a barrier has been the inability to progress projects on the ground because of COVID. I expect us to be trying to make up for a bit of lost time there. And that goes for aid and development funding across the region from a number of different providers. Oh yeah,
does the government support the newly formed alliances against deep sea mining and their calls to ban deep sea mining across the region?
Well, one thing I would say that we may have as common ground is that we are concerned with any activity into this space without us having a legal framework to protect the environment and to manage environmental outcomes. And so we're very clear there is an absence of that for the most part. And so we have offered our support and to play a role in making sure that we have those mechanisms, so to make sure that we have protections in place. Yeah.
Prime Minister, we've been told that Australian and New Zealand diplomats, as well as others, have been trying
Do my last one then, Ben.
to get Kiribati to this forum meeting. Is the door closed on that? Is diplomacy
No.
needed? Or?
No, not at all. I mean, this happens to be the meeting of the PIF, the ability to re-enter. That would be a standing invitation, I imagine, from the forum at all times to every member. So no, I imagine all forum members will likely keep up their engagement with Kiribati and their support for Kiribati. It is an incredibly tough time.
Can I just ask, Susie, earlier you said unprompted. That
It's a bit
the
sneaky. I think I
assessment-
said one last question. All right. Last one. Sorry.
Pick up the tissues.
You're right. I'll pick up my tissue. It's because I'm delicately. You're not balancing on a heel here, so I'll let you finish.
Admirable.
Thank you.
Unprompted earlier, you said that, and it was the view of some other, the assessment of other people that America had waned in its interest in the Pacific. Is that your assessment?
Oh, look, I think that they weren't as present as they perhaps have been in the past. I see that more as a statement of fact rather than a judgment, and ultimately there's been a call for more engagement, and you see the response to that, but the Tuna Treaty in particular is a very, very important piece of work by the Pacific. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.